Hello. Welcome to Astoria.
My name is Kylie.
Oh, God. My name's Jamie.
Why'd you say it like that? Oh, God.
Oh, God.
I hope everyone is feeling good and happy and just living your best life this July.
Yeah. It's been kind of chilly, I feel like.
It's been rainy, which is nice. We needed the moisture.
My garden is doing fantastic.
It was cold. Last night I slept with a sweatpants and a sweater.
Really?
I was cold. Yeah.
Man, I slept till 6:50 this morning.
Nice.
Because the last couple days, I have been waking up super early. And Ruby decided to be a bitch and just meow at 5:30 in the morning at the door wanting to go outside.
What a bitch. Ruby.
She was just like, meow, meow. Because James was downstairs and he let the dogs out, but he didn't let her out.
Oh.
And so she throws a tantrum, and I was about to grab the spray bottle and be like, shut up, I want to sleep.
Right.
But that didn't happen, so.
Yesterday, Delilah pooped. Okay, so she always wakes up at like 6 a.m.
Yeah.
That's like her pee time, and then we go back to sleep usually. I struggle with going back to sleep, but I try.
Yeah.
But yesterday, I took her out, and we came back in, and then I had to pee really bad, so I was peeing. And then when I came back, I saw that there was poop, like diarrhea. Sorry, you're welcome. Diarrhea all over the carpet in the office, and I was like, ah. And like it looks like we got it out, but like I took that scrub thing. I was scrubbing it. Dogs.
That phase is never fun.
Yeah, she's doing better, and we're getting another doggy door, so she'll be able to just kind of go outside whenever. That's really helping, and then we're blocking off the downstairs area and the upstairs. So
that's nice.
Yeah, you're welcome for all of this pet talk. I know you guys miss Ruby's meowing in the background and her feeder going off.
I can still bring it over.
She'll be like, where's my food? Oh, man.
Crazy cat.
What a time.
I know, but it's so much nicer to not have, like, all that chaos.
Yeah, it is. It's less to keep track of. We can just close the door and be like, bye.
Yeah.
Bye, dogs. Oh, my God, that was scary.
That was really loud.
Where was that?
Happy July.
It's still July 2nd, so we still got fireworks. Oh, that one scared me. I bet Harley's losing her shit downstairs.
Probably.
If you hear fireworks in the background,
ignore them.
Yeah, we're just patriotic over here. Except not really, but
another one's coming, I think.
Okay.
Nope.
Feudalism. Yeah. Speaking of popping?
I don't know.
Popping heads off?
Oh. That's a bit brutal.
Okay, anyway, hi guys, welcome to part 2 of Feudal Japan.
It's getting kind of late. It's past our bedtime.
9:30. Oh man. Okay, well, I mentioned this in the first episode. I did not cover everything. We never do. You need to do your own research, and I will be talking more about Japan in the future. So, there's a lot, but we're going to keep this one short and just continue talking about feudalism because there's so much to learn, and it's pretty freaking cool. So, well, it's cool and devastating all at the same time.
Yes.
It's a lot of emotions at once. But, okay, so we last talked about samurais and all of that fun stuff, and how somebody had to die after each battle. So if you didn't listen to that episode, go listen to episode 1 first. Okay.
I really hope you all can hear this to see what we're going through right now.
This is a freaking hot. I never thought fireworks would be. Could close the window, but I don't even think that would help. It sounds like a tea kettle.
No, it's like one of those, like...
The ones that, like, shoot up?
Yeah.
Not a firecracker.
It's something like that. And it's a fountain.
Yeah.
It's one of those sprinkler fountains.
Trying to record a podcast. Should I close the window?
Probably.
That might help.
Hopefully.
Otherwise, I will be distracted even more.
Closing the window.
Speaking to the chair.
Kylie's closing the window.
Thanks, Cersei.
Do, 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 do. Please stand by. Do, 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 do,
Keep going.
do, do. She closed the window. Oh, there's more fireworks.
Oh, it's quiet now.
Now it's quiet. Let's get back to the show.
Who needs sponsors when you can just have Jamie sing? Okay.
Yeah, you're the one who can carry a tune.
No, I want you to sing. Okay. So, let's get back to Japan, shall we?
Yes.
I don't know what accent I did just now. Okay, so like mentioned earlier, Japan was known to be a place of grace, tranquility, and harmony in nature. However,
Quote.
yeah, in nature. So when you're not fighting, you can be full of peace and tranquility. But the samurai were also very much worth celebrating. Sometimes the samurai would just look around for money and fame, and they wouldn't even fight, but they would call themselves samurai. So they can be in charge. But most of the time, they would fight in the civil wars. Okay. Now, they're known to be very fierce, but it's debatable if they were actually, like, physically strong fierce, or some people think they unlocked magical forces of strength and courage after resting in nature. So they thought, like, if you sit out in nature for a long time, then you can get those powers to be fierce. So a lot of people in the culture felt that way.
I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, so you can decide. I try not to laugh. So do you want to know the symbol of a warrior?
Yeah.
Cherry blossom.
Oh, I freaking love cherry blossoms.
Isn't that cute? So it's very interesting because if you think of a cherry blossom, you pick it up and it's just like one gust of wind and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You know? So it's interesting that like they're comparing a warrior to a little petal that will fly away instantly, you know, very fragile and delicate. But it represents a warrior knowing that he will one day reach his end. And just like a petal, he wants his end to be noble, pure, and beautiful.
Okay.
So, you know, chopping your head off.
They take like such like an innocent, like kind of pure thing,
Yeah.
and it's just like it has such sinister undertones.
Right. Yeah, it is very interesting. And a lot of it does have to do with religion.
Yeah.
And that's why I do want to cover maybe even Shinto, but Buddhism for sure.
Yeah.
Because a lot of their choices, you know, kind of have to do with that. Did you hear zipping?
That was the chair.
Oh, it sounded like someone zipped something up. I was like,
Sorry.
what? Is there a ghost in here?
Leather chairs are always so loud. And
We hear so much in these headphones. You probably don't hear anything.
I just get like, I'm a person who can't sit still.
Yeah, I'm that way too. I get it. So many believe that they were so effective because they weren't scared of death. They really just focused on the now and being brave. Mm-hmm. And they really didn't think about like, I'm going to die after this, because they know one of them's going to die. You have a 50% chance of dying in the battle.
Yeah.
It could be you, right? So, but they didn't care. So they were known to like live in the moment and just fight for the honor instead of knowing that they could die. They often actually chose to die if they lost and the other person didn't end up beheading them for whatever reason. Maybe they felt like it wasn't a fair fight.
Yeah.
Or they felt disgraced in battle. Suicide was demanded. So this is when they would choose to die. And the samurai completed suicide traditionally by a ritual. This was called seppuku or hirakiri. And they would plunge a knife deep into the left side of their abdomen. And this went across the midsection, and then they pulled upwards. The reason why they chose to do it this way is that it would take hours and to even days to die.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they chose the abdomen because it's the center of a man's body. And so they believe that the abdomen contains the soul, and in the soul you have ambition and emotions and everything that is contained there. So they believe that that should be where they get killed.
How did they keep their population going? there's like people dying left and right.
I think they just had a lot of people. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, you get those people who you're kind of forcing to be samurai as well, but a lot of people at this time were samurai.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, they really went for the soul. That was their belief, that you have to destroy the soul first.
Wow.
And they wanted it to be painful because they wanted to have to think about, like, did I do what I wanted to do in this life? And they wanted to be able to, like, kind of end things on a positive note in their mind.
That sucks if you're like 22 years old.
Yeah.
You haven't lived anything.
Mm-hmm. It's really sad. And they also chose the abdomen. Like I said, it takes a long time to die. It also is a test of will. Are you willing to wait? Are you willing to sit there while people watch you slowly die?
Good Lord.
And only a few men who were samurai would do it themselves. A lot of them would actually have a friend do it for them. And so they would always have somebody, even if they chose to do it themselves, they'd always have somebody next to them with the sword, just in case they back out. Then they could finish it for them.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So I know shit's wild. So they always had someone else with a sword just in case. In case someone like chickens out. But sometimes a swordsman would slice off their head. And so basically how this works is you're facing the opposite direction. So your back is towards a group of people because people watch this. So your back is towards them. The person who's cutting off your head is in front of you. And so when they cut off your head, they don't cut it all the way off. They leave some of the skin. That way you don't see, the people that are watching don't see like the head going off because it's still hanging by skin. Yeah. So you're welcome for that imagery.
Oh my God.
But you weren't allowed to let the head roll back. You couldn't see that because that doesn't give them honor. Unless it's in battle, then you can decapitate them and then carry their head around. But that's besides the point. So, that's death for you. We can still hear them. It's less loud. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about preparing for battle and the different things they had for that. So they carried small arsenal of weapons. They had bow and arrow. They had spears. They had lances. They had knives. They would sometimes even bring a fan made of iron to attack.
That's wild.
So they're just like holding the fan and then they're like, "Pacha!" The sword was the main weapon, obviously.
Yeah.
And as warlords became more popular, they had to expand their armies. So they believed that the easiest weapon to give to everyone was a sword, and that it was the most effective. Swords are easiest to hide. They're easiest to put away. And spears would take up way too much time.
Yeah.
And so they knew they needed something that they could easily get to and easily put back. And they have to get a perfect sword. They can't just like go buy a sword at the store from a merchant. They have to go to an artisan and have them make it in front of them. And it had to be extra special. They need a little special sword.
Well, yeah, because if you look at them, like, they're so crafted and detailed. And they even have, like, engravings on the blade itself.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is. I was looking at a bunch of pictures and I was like, whoa.
They're beautiful. You should add that into
some
of the pictures.
I
yeah.
like that. We'll do that. And so in order to make the swords, we had steel that was pounded. And once they pound it for a while, it produces 4 layers. And then if they fold the 4 layers, you now have 8 layers. And they would keep folding it, and it would double each time. Some swords had millions of layers of steel. It's just crazy to think about that hitting you. So these layers allowed the swords to be flexible and strong. They wanted to have as much steel in them as they could. But you had to have years of training and practice to really be good with them. It's not something you can just like
pick up.
Let's try it. I'm sure they did that, but you had to be ready at any point to use a sword. So obviously you can't chicken out. You got to use the sword. You have to know how to use a sword. Otherwise it's embarrassing. Your parents will not be proud. So a lot of people actually believe that the sword had a soul. which I find this very, very fascinating because they put a soul onto the sword so that when they kill someone, they can say the sword killed the person instead of them. It makes it feel more ethical.
That just makes so much sense now.
I know. Their sword did it. It wasn't the person. It was the sword all along. We cracked the code. Oh man, I feel like it's a Scooby-Doo episode. It wasn't him? No, it was his sword. Okay. So that was another reason why like they didn't feel guilty about killing.
Yeah.
Because they really just felt like it wasn't them doing it.
That's wild.
Yeah. But many samurai were devastated after killing. A lot of them like could not handle it. Obviously, that'd be really hard to do. And so they would go to Buddhism and practice their Buddhism. And Buddhism, just to be brief, it preaches the cycles of birth and rebirth. So each life depends on the virtues and sins of the previous life. So obviously, like what goes around comes around. That's kind of their thought. And they felt like their next life would be full of suffering because of their killings. And so they really knew that like they had to talk to Buddha and they had to kind of make things right before they die. And so they also believed that because they killed so much that their punishment was to be reborn in the next life as samurai. And then they would have a second chance.
I was thinking it was like they're samurai again, so they would be murdered.
Sort of. It kind of.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to do the murdering.
Yeah.
Maybe this time they won't kill people. And then you just start over and over again until you have a good life.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them were like, we'll just try again next life and hope for the best. And again, if your name was an honor, then that's something good that you did. People honored you. They respected you. So then in your next life, you automatically have that honor with you.
Okay.
So it kind of passes on. So it makes like it's hard to understand how like you can be peaceful and tranquil and then add all this violence, like brutal murders.
Yeah.
But like their mindset is not focused on like dying. Once you're dead, you're dead. It's like we get to start over.
Yeah, it's that belief in reincarnation that really gives you just like, this is not the end.
Right.
So,
and that's really what they focused on.
It's crazy how the brain just works in so many different ways.
Yeah. It's like whatever you tell yourself, you can convince yourself and go off of your beliefs and kind of like think of things in a different way.
And honestly, like that's not a bad way to live. Like committing murder is a bad way to live,
right.
But just like not fearing death.
Right. I think Buddhism is beautiful. And that's another reason why I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want it to be painted in like a negative light because of this. Like this really was just, humans failing and like everyone was fighting.
Yeah.
So that's what we did back then.
That's what humans do.
Right. Yeah. They're still fighting just in different ways.
Yep.
Are you ready to hear about the women?
Oh, yes. This is always intriguing to me.
I love talking about the Spartan women. Japanese women at this time were known to be very obedient and gentle, but they were also very much respected warriors. There was a famous warrior. Her name was Tomo, and she was known to be stronger than most men.
That's awesome.
So she would just ride around on a horse and just like snap people's heads off. And she's known to be one of Japan's biggest heroes.
That's awesome.
I have a funny story. So from this, one enemy once tried to pull his sword on her, and she just kind of stared at him and was like, really? Took off, because when he tried to cut her arm, he only took off her sleeve. And she was like, wow, good try. So then she grabbed her sword and immediately cut off his head. And then, because she was angry, and then she took his head and brought it back home to her husband. And she was like, here you go. I killed him. Don't worry. I took care of it. It was like the trophy and prize.
Oh my gosh. They just had it on their dinner table.
Yeah. He's like, wow.
It's their centerpiece.
He's like, high five. That was great work out there.
High five.
Yeah. Do they just like put it somewhere in their house and they're just like, wow, look at that.
I mean, if you think of Vlad the Impaler, he would put heads on a stake.
Yeah, that's true. If he can do it, I'm sure a lot of people.
I wonder, something similar, maybe.
Yeah. It keeps sounding like people are knocking, but it's a firework. Oh my god. Now they're continuous.
They're so pretty, though.
They are. Okay. Yeah. If you're gonna do a firework, you gotta do those. Because the other ones are just obnoxious. You know, the... Okay. That was a good impersonation. Woman warriors were very rare, obviously. It's not a common thing to be a woman and to be fighting. And there was really nothing remarkable about a woman being a samurai. It was just like, okay, cool. Because once a male was a samurai, he would pass it down to his descendants, which means if you're a female, you're a samurai. So it's not like it's not so much like Sparta. Like if you were fighting as a woman, like you were like, whoa, girl, you rocking it. But like they didn't care. Because it was more common.
It was more of just like the family job.
Right. Yep. So usually more so women would run the farming at their houses. And then during the actual battles and the wars, there was a hard distinction between the home and the battlefield. Like it kind of disappeared. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times they didn't know where they were safe and where they had to fight. So women actually had to like be ready and defend their families at all times. Mm-hmm. And so the men would be gone and they would have to stay at the house and just be ready to defend themselves. Marriage obviously did not really have any romance with all of that being said.
Yep.
And it was mostly just a practical affair. It represented political alliance, obviously, when you're married, and that way they could pass it down. Mm-hmm. Typical. And the samurai would actually sleep with... This is kind of funny. The samurai would sleep with their swords because they didn't trust their wife.
I mean, if she knows how to work a sword, like, I wouldn't be trusting her either.
Right. And I'm sure she, if she had a sword, she was probably sleeping
with her too. If she knows how to use a sword and you criticize her dinner or whatever she did for the day... You better have your sword next to you because you don't know she could be using hers on you.
Right. Yeah.
Don't criticize her.
No, do not. Do not criticize her.
Mm-mm. Like Tomo. I don't think her husband did shit. He probably was just like, you're so great. Like,
he was just like, yes,
great.
Good job. Like, she's going to kill him if not. I want to know more about her, by the way. I'm very interested.
I think it would be cool to cover an episode on her.
I wonder how much information's out about her. But we'll see. We'll have to check. Okay, so similar to Sparta, and similar to a lot of other places, there weren't labels, so homosexuality technically was not like a label yet. Mm-hmm. But the men would actually be with other men because again, they're around them all the time, and this is where they actually felt love,
just like Sparta.
Yeah, and so once again, this has been going on for a long time. Mm-hmm. Just when people are like, man, times have really changed. No, they have not. Okay, sorry. So yeah, this is when like, because they didn't feel love with their wives, but they felt love with each other. You're with them all the time. You're fighting with them. If one of them protects you, you're gonna fall in love with them. So it was normal for men to be with other men romantically. They just didn't marry them.
Well, no, because they couldn't have children.
Right. That's really all the marriage was.
Pretty much.
So healthy and great. The samurai were not always violent. They were known for their fighting, but they actually wrote, read, and studied. They were known to be very, very educated. Education has always been something very much in high regards in Japan, and poetry was actually huge for the samurai. A lot of times before they would... I didn't even see that one. A lot of times before they would complete suicide or go into battle, they would write a poem. And in this poem, they would say goodbye. Mm-hmm. And then they would talk about their courage and how they want it to live on. So they'd be like, I'm going to go fight right now. If I die, just know, like, I did it for the right reasons. I want you to remember me as someone who was brave and courageous. And it was kind of like a spiritual resurrection. It was their way of being like, I'm good. Like, no matter what, I'm doing this for a good reason. Mm-hmm. Even if it ends up me hurting myself or I have to hurt someone else. Like, this is all for good reason. Mm-hmm. So they kind of wrote these poems to not convince themselves, but like for further generations and to really just like have people understand why they did what they had to do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. There was a lot of arts that had to do with it. It wasn't just martial arts, but okay, sorry. There were a lot of warriors who were also artists. One of them, who is very famous, his name is Mayumato Musashi. And he has paintings and sculptures everywhere in Japan still to this day.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And he would paint the most beautiful pictures, like birds and flowers. They're all really pretty and colorful. He killed at least 60 men. So
I mean, if you're killing that many people, you need something to like cool you off.
I agree. Yes. So that just kind of goes to show like a lot of them, they might have been really involved in fighting, but they also had that creative side and they wanted to show beauty, and that kind of plays in with the tranquility and the peace. Now, I know you all have been wondering about ninjas. I know it's been in the back of your mind. Well, I hate to tell you, there's not much information about ninjas. Think about it. They're secretive. You know? So, we know ninjas actually did move in silence. They wore all black. They were samurai, but they just served as spies or assassins. Okay. So they just were more secretive. So they did everything a samurai did, and they were in the same class as samurai as the warriors, but they were just more secretive about it. And obviously because like people didn't want others to know that they hired assassins or they hired a spy, there's like not a lot of information because nobody's going to sit there and be like, I needed help with this, so I hired like no one's going to admit that.
A documentation just isn't a thing.
Right. Yeah. And so nobody really talks about ninjas, and there's not a lot of information just because like, one, they're supposed to be secretive. Two, you don't want to admit that you had to hire a ninja or an assassin.
Yeah.
And if you were a ninja, you don't want to admit that you were one. So, unfortunately, there's not a lot, but I think that's what makes them fun.
Yeah.
Is to know there's some secret in there. I was like, where's the rest of my notes? Oh, there they are. Okay. Cool. So, Europeans were known to... Oh, now I'm getting to, like, geography stuff. Fun things. How did people get to them? That kind of thing. So, Europeans were known to be in many parts of Asia, but they had not yet gone to Japan. Japan was very mysterious and very forbidding. Is that a word? Foreboding?
Forbidden?
Forbidden. Thank you. I don't know what I wrote. It's forbidden. So Japan was mysterious and forbidden. A lot of people could not get to them.
Yeah.
So in 1542, a Chinese ship arrived in the south of Japan. On this ship were the first Europeans ever to go to Japan. And the Japanese were like, whoa, they're so cool.
Look at this white man.
They were like so fascinated by them because of their weapons. You know, they have their musket. And the Japanese are like, whoa, that's the coolest shit I've ever seen. Like, they're like just blown away. And so the Europeans, they pulled out these weapons. They were 3 feet long around there. They were straight. They were made of heavy substance. They were filled with powder and small lead pellets. You have your musket. And the Japanese heard the explosion and they were like, whoa, it sounds like lightning. Like, I just imagine them like clapping, like, imagine seeing something like that for the very first time. Like, they're not technically advanced.
Yeah.
Is that the word? Yeah. English. Okay. But anyway, they don't have a lot of like technical stuff. And so they were just fascinated by this. A samurai lord of Tanegashima brought 2 of these weapons. And he actually had his chief sword maker duplicate them. He's like, can you make more of these? These are really cool. We want them. Many samurai were like, no, we do not need these because you're weak if you have this. Because they believed that bravery was coming face to face with someone. That's why we have swords. Why would we need this? Being far away and trying to kill someone from far away, that's just cowardly.
Yeah.
And so many samurai were like, absolutely not. They really did feel like firearms were for cowards. And I totally get that. Like, that makes a lot of sense. But they eventually were like, okay, we have to make guns because everyone else is doing it. We like, if we want to be ready for the future, we have to kind of advance. And so for the first 50 years after that, they actually had more guns at one point than any country in Europe, because they just got so excited about it.
They just kept producing.
Yeah. And Japan was now moving toward consolidation. In 1600, there were campaigns in the Battle of Sekigahara. And the warlord, his name was... It doesn't help that I wrote really sloppy.
Yeah.
So I can't tell if I'm saying their name right. Takugura Ieyasu. Oh, sorry. Ieyasu. Mm-hmm. He was a warlord, and the dynasty would rule over Japan. So Japan is now united. They're at peace. Mm-hmm. And they have a protected dynasty by being closed to the outside world. That means foreigners, they kind of got to this point where they kicked all foreigners out. They kicked all ideas that were foreign out. They kicked all foreign religions out, and all weapons were banned because of this new ruler, this new warlord. Mm-hmm. He wanted to get back to what Japan was before. And so they kicked everyone out. They stopped making guns. And this era would last for 250 years where they would not have war.
Jeez.
And this is really where we see the peace and kind of what they built their culture on, because I think Ieyasu just got to a point where he was like, guys, what are we doing? Like, we're losing everything that we created from the beginning. And so he wanted everything to be out and just for them to go back to where they were. No more war, no more fighting, and to just focus on being in nature. And that was his goal. And so that's what happened. And for 250 years without war, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so the samurais are like, well, we can't fight anymore. So what do we do? So a lot of them became administrators. They would oversee rice production. They would write laws a lot of times. So they were still in power, but they just didn't have to cut each other's heads off anymore.
That is quite nice.
Yeah. So it's always great. Sometimes they would serve as judges. And so that was always fun too for them. Love that. You might have heard of the Samurai's Code. Or the Code of the Samurai. Mm-hmm. So the code actually came out at this time. And this was to show how the warrior should behave. Because if you're a samurai, you still are above, but instead of fighting for your honor, it's more so about how you're living.
Yeah.
And this was called, this idea, or this code was called the Bushido. And it means the way of the warrior. So honor was still above all. It was still the most important thing that they had. And it even got bigger. It was more so important to have honor than anything else, especially now that you can't win in a battle.
Yeah.
Now it was you have to make choices in order to have that honor in your life. Mm-hmm. So it was even bigger than usual. Honor now included the responsibility of taking care of all society. So that means everyone who's struggling in the streets, being there to help them, give them food. So we can see how they're actually showing their tranquility and and they're
for the first time.
Right. And so I just imagine these 250 years were just beautiful, but they were helping each other out and really building up society how they wanted it to be. Mm-hmm. And so people wanted to live in Japan. They couldn't, they couldn't get to it. And so they were known to be a very peaceful area at this time. And I'm so glad for those little merchants that you're getting taken care of. On July 8th, 1853, this was 2.5 centuries later, the U.S. Navy ships boldly sailed into Tokyo Bay. Once again, America thinks they can just come in and ruin everything. We're all at peace. And then, boom. Americans asked Japan to be open to trade or they would suffer consequences.
That's so stupid.
God, America.
What does Japan have to... what do they want to trade with them for?
I think they wanted land at this time.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Because 1853.
It's a fucking small island. How much land are you really going to get?
I know. So Japan, I feel so bad for them. Just thinking of it, They're doing so good. 250 years. But they knew they'd be overpowered by technology, especially America. So they had to become modern very quickly and kind of just throw all their ideals away and just think about how can we win? Because obviously America's not going to give up on pursuing us. Makes me so mad. Like the things that America does, and like we're just like 4th of July. Like, I don't know. It's hard sometimes. I have a love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so they decided to instantly get a constitution, and they got a monarch. The emperor was restored as head of the government because I forgot to mention, but the emperor was like kicked out once the samurais became more powerful. But now they're like, we need you. We need an emperor. Come on. And by the 20th century, the samurai ways were completely forgotten. The samurai code broken. Nobody really cared. And it was all about becoming the greatest and strongest nation. And Japan was now in modern weapons and gear. They didn't have their swords. They didn't have the leather uniforms that they would wear. Their colorful armor. They didn't care about that anymore. And the Japanese just had to be ready to fight at all times.
Yeah.
So, army officers would carry swords like the samurais used in 1930 after invading China. So they actually did bring the swords back after the battle just to be like, this is us, we're Japan. But they didn't really like use them in battle. So I'm just kind of mentioning different times that samurais were kind of mentioned or their early ideals were used. So Nazi Germany...
Go figure.
Yeah. Japanese knew that America would be the only power that could stop them from conquering Asia. So they attacked Pearl Harbor to stop America from fighting in the Pacific. When in China and dominating parts of Asia, they would use old samurai swords to murder prisoners of war. So they brought their swords back for that. And so they're kind of bringing these ideas back. In World War II, the government ruined ideals of the samurai. They were not concerned with the samurai virtue. They only cared about military campaigns. So the war turned against Japan when America came, and the samurai tradition was fulfilled. Many surrendered while others chose death, which means we're going back to the idea of suicide, which was huge during World War II in Japan. They actually have videos of people just like jumping off cliffs.
Yep.
Because they thought that was the way.
That was the honorable way.
Yeah. And so it's really hard. I'm sorry. I should have put a trigger warning on that. But trigger warning, suicide is mentioned a lot in these episodes. Sorry. I forget. In 1943, suicide was the biggest form of combat that they had. So a lot of their men were lost just because of ending it. And then we have the kamikaze pilots. And these pilots attacked with themselves. So they would crash their planes into American ships. And they knew that they would die by doing so. They're just like, well, we're going to die anyway. YOLO. So in August 1945, Americans finally brought the war to end. And this is when everyone just kind of, in Japan, they went blank. They didn't know what to do next.
Oh, especially after the bombs.
Right. So just imagine, like, you throw away everything that you loved and cared for. You fight in a few wars and, like, become this insane, powerful society who, like, just loses all your culture and ideals. And then you're just left blank. You're back to kind of where you started. And so they're like, what do we do next?
Yeah, because they, even before World War II, like their war started, like their World War started in 1937.
Yeah.
Because that's when they went over to China and started invading and taking their land and kind of wanted to explode more. And so they just, it's really sad to see, especially with the atomic bombs that hit. So many people died in those in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like, that was devastating. And especially after that, you have to recover, and people are sick after that. Like, there's like forms of cancer that they develop.
Horrible.
It was awful.
Yeah.
but it's like they would have kept going. Like it's fucked up to say, but they would have kept going because they had so much honor and they didn't want to give up.
They didn't have a limit to like how far they would go. And they want to live their best life.
Yeah. And the bombs were like a wake up call of just like, stop.
Yeah.
And then after the bombs hit, they pretty much got like a wake up call of just like, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah. And that's kind of where we are at this point. Like, they're all just like, okay. And like Japan is destroyed. And they don't even care about the Code of the Samurai anymore. Now they look at it and they're like, wow, we suck. Like they just feel like we're getting complete failure. And so when they rebuilt, they really focused on the samurai being restored and the Code of the Samurai and all of those ideals. And so I think that takes a lot of courage in itself to be like, we're not going to continue being like this. We're going to go back to where we started. Especially now that, 1945, you know, when they could continue to be very strong. But they were like, we can't do that. So they actually restored all of their old ideals and the old code. And they're still known to go above and beyond to help others. Like they're still focused on those ideals of bringing honor and trying to live the best life they can and be the best people they can. And so a lot of those ideals still exist today. And so self-sacrifice and grace from early Japan now inspires them. And that's really what Japan focuses heavily on. A lot of people want to live there because of, the culture and because of how they are and like just not letting foreigners just like come on in and destroy us. Like they're very like safe and particular about who they let in.
Well, I think too with that, it's like everybody knows what they're capable of.
Yeah.
And it's just like how they could just turn a switch like they did.
And get modern so quickly.
Yeah. But if you look at it too, like their technology is like, it's not so much military technology, but just like advanced technology and like the sciences.
Yes, they're very smart.
Yes, they are very smart people.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because that's why people want to go to like Tokyo and stuff, is that their technology is just out of this world.
Right.
And then you look at like their countryside too, of just seeing this like established like tranquility and kind of clarity of like what they had in that like 250 years. And it's amazing how they realized we fucked up.
Right. Yeah, they came to terms with it and they grew from it.
Exactly. And it's just like,
that's not easy to do.
No. So it's just from that time, like World War II, it's like, don't forget what they did, but it's also like to remember like what actually happened and whatnot. But it's just like, oh, pretty, but fireworks. But it's just, you have to move forward too. And that's why like it's really important to just like not judge them for that. Cause like, if we did, we would still be trashing on them. We would still be trashing on the Germans.
Right.
Too. But it's like they finally realized we fucked up. We need to do something different. We need to go back to our roots. In Japan, them getting bombed by the US twice was kind of that, oh,
right.
We need to like,
it's like a slap in the face.
It is. It is a slap in the face that like you tried so hard to move forward and to be the best, and then you realize, is it really worth it if your people are going to be destroyed because you think this is like the right thing to do? And that's the problem with like having the government and having the military just like really just push out those old like traditional ideals of just like tranquility of what they wanted to, because some traditions I don't agree with.
Right.
But in their sense, theirs was to bring peace.
Right. They didn't care about like their founding fathers and like their constitution. Like it wasn't about that to them. It was like, who are we as humans? How can we love each other?
Yeah.
Like it's just, I respect it so much.
And it's just the rest of the world that ruins it.
Yep. They were doing so good.
Yeah.
They were doing so good.
It's devastating.
So there's so much out there, guys. And like, oh man, there's so much I'm excited to cover about Japan in the future.
I would love to cover Pearl Harbor. That one would probably be a 3-part or 4-part series.
That would be good.
Because it's more than just the bombing. There's so much build up to it. There's so much just aftermath and just the stories between Pearl Harbor that, honestly, it would probably be a 4-part series that
you should do that.
Yeah, that's on my list of things that I wanted. I think the next couple ones that I want to cover are just going to be like single episodes. Maybe some people.
We'll stop 2-parters for a second.
I have a person in mind that I want to do, and I don't know if it will be a 2-part. I mean, I would try to make it 1 part, but it would probably be a little bit longer.
Okay.
But, yeah, I kind of want to do more of just like for the next like couple weeks, maybe throw in like another mythology.
Ooh,
do like a fun person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of more lax for a second, and then we'll get into it.
Kind of dive. Because, after doing Napoleon, I was like, oh my God. It's nice to kind of just step back and do like kind of just like an offshoot one of just like a random.
Yeah. I will be doing Buddhism just because it kind of goes with this. Yeah. And there's just so much to it. That's so fascinating. So
it is a very fascinating
that'll be
religion.
Coming soon.
So Yay! We made it.
We mentioned this last week, but we will not have an episode next week. Wedding issues. No, not issues, sorry. Wedding is happening. So, no episode, but that's okay. We'll be back the next week.
Kylie needs to prep.
I gotta prep, you know? I need the whole week. Obviously. So, we'll be back, the weekend after next.
So,
yeah.
We'll have quite a bit.
Yeah.
To catch up for that.
For sure.
It'll be fun. Thank you for hanging in. Where can you find us?
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at History of the Podcast. You can email us at historyofthepodcast@gmail.com. The chairs are squeaking. The fireworks are popping. We gotta go.
That's a good exit.
Okay, goodbye. Bye.